Ladies and gentlemen, it is my favorite time of every 4 years, or every 2 years including midterms. It's election time. Let me tell you about the first time I ever voted. I went into, I guess it was a nursing home, and they had those electronic voting machines all set up, and I went in, and I had my guy I wanted to vote for president in mind. I went into the voting booth, and I looked down at the ballot, and my goodness, there were a lot of people there. I just come here for the president. There were a lot of positions on that ballot. I had no idea what they were. Railroad commissioner and county judge and comptroller. I had no idea what these people were, and I had no idea who to pick. So by the time I got done voting, I had left maybe 90% of that ballot completely blank. And I felt like, gosh, that was kind of a wasted opportunity. So in order to prevent that from happening again, I have compiled a comprehensive list of every single ballot position I might ever run across. And I'm going to share it with you so we can both feel confident going into this next election and perhaps maybe fill out 90 to 100% of that ballot. Now, for all of us in the United States, the federal government positions will be the same. However, once I start getting into state and local positions, things might differ from my area to your area. So if something is different in your area from my area, comment below and let us know what that position is and what the difference is. That way we can all learn together. I'm going to go through every ballot position all the way from the federal government down to the local government, and I'm going to describe what each job actually is and what the candidate can actually do once they're in office. Because oftentimes when candidates are running, they'll say they don't like this or they don't like that, but when they actually get the job, they can't do anything about this or that. They were just saying what they don't like and what they do like in order to get votes. Also, I'm going to tell you what exact areas you should do extra research on to determine if that candidate is right for you. Now, if their campaign is at least halfway decent, they should have a website with their positions on all the different issues I'll mention. However, if they don't, hopefully with a quick Google search of what does X think about Y, something should at least pop up. However, make sure when you're doing your research, only take the things that are said from the candidate's mouth or their official campaign. Don't rely solely on what other people are saying the candidate says. Get your info straight from the horse's mouth. All right, let's get to it. Let's start with the very top of the ballot, president. First of all, the president is commander-in-chief of the military. So you might check and see what sort of foreign policy he wants to implement, what sort of provocations would prompt a military engagement, what types of military he would use, and when and how he would use it. Next, he vetoes and passes laws. So you might want to check what issues he wants to pass or veto, depending on what issues are running through Congress. We'll talk about that later. He pardons federal crimes and designates national monuments or parks. If you have any personal interests there, that might be interesting to look into. He appoints cabinet members, which are heads of all the federal agencies in the executive branch that pass regulations on certain areas of government. Now, these aren't laws per se, but they certainly can push Congress to pass certain laws that will help make their jobs easier. The members of the president's cabinet include the vice president, who is the top advisor to the president, the State Department, which deals with foreign relations, the Treasury Department, which deals with printing money and taxes, the Defense Department, which is the military, the Department of Justice, headed by the Attorney General, who represents the United States in any federal cases, and they decide which laws to really prosecute, because there are actually several laws right now on the books that are completely ignored and nobody bothers to enforce them. It's the DOJ's job to decide which laws to really focus on enforcing and which ones to set aside, since they have limited resources. Department of the Interior, which deals with land usage and Native American relations. Department of Agriculture, which is farming stuff. The Department of Commerce, which is business and industry. The Department of Labor, which deals with protecting workers with things such as safety training and minimum wage. The Department of Health and Human Services, which deals with medical things, and within the Department of Health and Human Services, you have organizations like the Food and Drug Administration and the Center for Disease Control. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, making sure Americans all have homes. The Department of Transportation, anything having to do with cars, trains, planes, and motorcycles. The Department of Energy, how we get power, whether it be through gas, nuclear power, or solar or wind. The Department of Education, which deals with all things education related, even up through college. The Department of Veterans Affairs, which deals with benefit programs for our veterans. The Department of Homeland Security, which deals with terrorism and national emergencies. Also within the cabinet is the President's Chief of Staff, who is basically the manager of the cabinet, and they represent the President and try to push his agenda in all the different areas of government. There's also the Environmental Protection Agency, which deals with all things having to do with the environment. The Office of Management and Budget, which deals with trying to implement the President's vision of the government's budget. The United States Trade Representative, who tries to recommend different trade policies to the President. The United States Mission to the United Nations, our representative to the UN. The Council of Economic Advisors, who advises the President on all things having to do with the economy. And finally, the Small Business Administration, who provides loans and other resources to small businesses. Now, if you have any interests in any of those positions of the cabinet, make sure to research those and see what kind of people the President will appoint to those positions and what areas of that topic they will focus on. And finally, the President appoints federal judges, including Supreme Court justices. Now, usually a president will only appoint maybe 2 or 3 justices top, but they can appoint hundreds of federal judges, so it's important not to ignore the federal judges. Now, oftentimes people focus on whether the President will appoint conservative or liberal judges. However, that's not really a very important factor in deciding judges. A lot of times people are surprised when a conservative judge will vote with the liberal judges or a liberal judge will vote with the more conservative judges. That's because the most important factor in deciding a case is not the judge's personal feelings on a certain issue, but rather their interpretation method of the law. There are 4 basic types of law interpretation. Textualism, which is the letter of the law. If it says in black and white XYZ, then XYZ. There's originalism, which takes into account the surrounding context of why the law was written. And so it's more about the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law. There's stare decisis, where the judge sides with past interpretations of similar cases. So stare decisis is all about precedent. And then fourthly, there's pragmatism, which is where the judge may, in spite of what the law says, means, or has been interpreted in the past, will decide to judge according to what the greater good is. This is where the judge will sometimes sacrifice a lesser value of the Constitution in favor of a greater value of the Constitution. For instance, the law being challenged may be said to hamper liberty, but the judge may decide to sacrifice liberty in favor of another value, such as life. Now, there's a bit more nuance to all 4 of those views, but hopefully that gives you a general idea of how judges can interpret a law differently. And so, what you want to do is research who the President says they will appoint to federal judge and Supreme Court justice positions, and what kind of interpretation they will try to lean toward. Will it be more towards the constitutionalist side of textualism and originalism, or will it be more toward the living document theory with stare decisis and pragmatism? All right, that's it for the President. I know that was a lot, but the President is in charge of a lot. And also, I front-loaded that just a little bit because you'll see that the same principles used for deciding who the best presidential candidate is will also carry on over to other positions lower on the ballot. All right, let's move on from the executive branch and go on to the wait a minute. We forgot somebody. Now, at first glance, it seems like there's only one person we can vote for in the executive branch, the President. And the President appoints all the judges and the cabinet members and so on. But there's actually one more person we can vote for in the executive branch, and that is the Vice President. Because you see, every vote for the President is also a vote for the Vice President. You cannot separate the two and only vote for one and not the other. However, you are still voting for both. You can also look at it as every vote for the Vice President is also a vote for the President. So, for everything you researched about the presidential candidate, you should also research about the vice presidential candidate, because there's about a 1 in 5 chance, statistically speaking, that the vice president will have to take over for the president at one point. Also, pay special attention to the issues going through Congress that we'll talk about in a few seconds, because the vice president also serves as a tiebreaker vote in the Senate. Alright, now we can move on to the legislative branch. In the legislative branch, we have senators and House representatives. So, what do the senators and the House representatives vote on? They vote on bills, and there is a list in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution that lists the kind of bills Congress will vote on. However, there are two clauses in there, the general welfare and the necessary and proper clauses, that allow a little wiggle room for the Congress to vote on more things than specifically outlined in the Constitution. Now, here's a list of things Congress generally votes on nowadays: immigration law, bankruptcy law, social security, civil rights laws, patent and copyright law, and federal crimes such as counterfeiting money. Now, how do you keep track of what kind of bills are the hot issues right now? One, you can keep up with the news, whether that be through television, radio, podcasts, or print newspaper. However, the news still has to be selective. So in order to get a comprehensive list of all the current bills, what you can do is go to gov.track.us and you can look up what bills are going through Congress right now at this very second. You can also search by your own congresspeople and research what kind of bills they've passed or sponsored or downvoted, etc. The Senate also has the job of confirming the president's appointees to some cabinet positions and the federal judge positions. So you might want to research what kind of appointees your senator candidates would approve. Also, all tax bills must originate in the House of Representatives. So you may want to spend a little extra time researching tax things for your representative candidates. However, the bill still has to go through both houses, so I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference. Alright, that was federal government. Time for round 2, state government. Now, I live in Texas, and the Texas Constitution, I know, is a little bit different from most of everyone else's. So again, if you live in a different area, comment below and let me know what the differences are between my form of government and yours. And again, we're going to start off with the executive branch, with the governor. The Texas governor's job is to veto and pass bills just like the president. So research what the state Congress is trying to pass right now. He's also the commander-in-chief of the state militia, the Texas National Guard. And what the Texas National Guard does is it doesn't really fight any wars or anything, but what they do is they concern themselves with border security and national emergency recovery, such as when a hurricane blows through, they'll go through with all their helicopters and pull people out of their flooding houses. So research if he has any plans on what specifically to do with the state militia. The governor also declares special elections and fills vacant seats in the courts and also appoints a few heads of Texas state agencies. There are 126 state agencies actually, and the governor only appoints the heads of a few of them, and he doesn't have that much power over most of them. Therefore, you should probably focus most of your research time on what kind of judges he plans on appointing. Again, go back to those 4 different methods of law interpretation: textualism, originalism, stare decisis, and pragmatism. Next in line in the executive branch is the lieutenant governor. He's pretty much the vice president for the governor, though he does have a little more power. He presides over and appoints committees in the Texas Senate, and he also serves as the tiebreaker vote. So again, research what kind of issues are going through the Texas Senate. Like the vice president, he presides over the state in case the governor is somehow incapacitated, and he controls the budgeting process. So since he's like the vice president and takes over if the governor somehow becomes unable to do his job, you should research everything you did for the governor for the lieutenant governor as well. And you may want to pay special attention to his budgeting strategies. See if he has a good financial head on his shoulders. The Texas state executive branch has some equivalencies to the federal executive branch. They both have things like attorney general and departments of agriculture. However, unlike the federal government, the Texas state government allows the voters to decide who they want as heads of the department themselves, instead of the head of the executive branch, the governor, appointing them by himself. And these are a little bit harder to vote on because they're more administrative roles than voting on certain issues type of roles. But we'll go and get started with the state attorney general. This is similar to the federal attorney general, only they deal with state laws. They mostly represent the state in civil litigation instead of criminal, unless where directed specifically by law. Civil litigation is people getting sued, and criminal is people breaking the law and having to pay a fine or spend jail time. So what you need to do is research what kind of laws this attorney general candidate is wanting to focus on. Next is the Comptroller of Public Accounts. They lead the Comptroller's office, who collect all the different state taxes. There are about 60 different kinds of taxes, none of which in Texas is state income taxes. They certify the amount of revenue state Congress can appropriate, and they hold lost money from the citizens and make interest off of it, kind of like a business. Go to claimittexas.gov, type in your name, and see if the state actually owes you money for some reason. If they do, you can claim it, and if you've been around for a while, you may make $50 off the deal or something like that. So you may want to research this Comptroller candidate's financial strategies. Next is the Commissioner of the General Land Office. They deal with the sale and management of public-owned land. They also keep track of land grants and titles, and they issue maps and surveys. So research what the candidate's plans are for state-owned land and see if that affects you in some way. Next is the Commissioner of Agriculture. Any regulations having to do with agriculture, production of agriculture, consumer protection, economic development, and healthy living. They give financial assistance to farmers and provide grant funding for new technologies. They're also in charge of weights and measures, everything from milk to gas stations. They make sure everything that's labeled a gallon really is a gallon, and everything that's labeled a pound really is a pound. If you're closely tied with agriculture in some way, you want to check and make sure all the regulations the Commissioner of Agriculture candidate is proposing would benefit you. Also check things about consumer protection, as that pretty much affects everybody, even if we don't really know it. Railroad Commissioner. And the Railroad Commission actually stopped regulating railroads back in 2005, so it's a bit of a misnomer. What the Railroad Commission deals with now is anything having to do with oil or gas, surface coal and uranium mining, propane, and pipelines. Now, these are all huge businesses in Texas, so the odds are in your favor that some regulation these candidates are proposing affects your life in some way, so be sure to research all of that. Next up is the State Board of Education, and they deal with public education for kindergarten through high school. This is not private school and this is not homeschool. This is only Texas state public schools. They won't necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of the operation of individual schools. It's a little more general and broad in scope. Probably the area of their job you're most interested in is that they approve the state curriculums, and that's where a lot of controversy can come in with evolution and intelligent design and revisionist history. So if you have any stake in those areas, make sure you research what these candidates are proposing to put in their curriculums. And that's the end of the state executive branch. Next up, the legislative. Again, I'll kind of lump in the state senators and the state representatives together, as they have very similar jobs. State laws are a bit different from federal laws. You'll have criminal matters such as murder and theft, divorce and family matters, welfare, wills and inheritances, real estate and property laws, business contracts, personal injury laws, and workers' compensation. Also, again, to get a comprehensive list, you can go to capital.texas.gov to see what kind of bills are being proposed in the state legislature right now. So research those subjects and see what the candidates are saying about them. And again, revenue bills start in the House, so maybe not pay a little more attention to that area for the state representative job. That's the end of Texas legislature. Now let's move on to the Texas judiciary. Now the governor only appoints absent judges. For regular elections, the Texas people actually get to elect what judges we have. We've got the Texas Supreme Court Justice, Court of Criminal Appeals Justice, Court of Appeals Justice, District Judge, and Criminal District Judge. The reason we have so many judges to vote on is because Texas actually has two systems of judicial government. One for civil matters, one for criminal matters. So again, for these judges and justices, you'll want to be researching the four types of law interpretation: textualism, originalism, stare decisis, and pragmatism. And at least for the lower judges, you may want to start researching what kind of punishments they favor for certain crimes. And that's the end of state government. On to round 3, local government. Starting off our local government, we have district attorney and criminal district attorney. This is basically like the attorney general for the federal government or the state government, only this is for a smaller area like a county. So again, you'll want to be researching what kind of crimes they would like to focus on. Next up, we've got county sheriff. What the sheriff does is enforce the criminal state laws. They manage and operate the county jail, provide court security, and serve warrants and papers. So he's basically the head enforcer of the law. So again, check and see what laws they would like to focus on. Next is county tax assessor/collector. They calculate and collect the property tax for the county. They also deal with registering motor vehicle stuff and voting. But the tax thing is probably their biggest voting issue, so check and see what their policies are regarding that and see if it will benefit you in any way. Next is the county judge, and they preside over misdemeanor courts and small civil cases. probate matters, and appeals from the Justice of the Peace. They also serve as the head of emergency management. So again, when those hurricanes come through, the county judge better have a good plan in mind. Also, there's the county commissioner. There are 4 county commissioners divided up into the county. And have you ever heard the question, who would build the roads? It's these guys. They're in charge of building all roads and bridges in the county. Now, what's important about the county judge and the county commissioners is that they all comprise the county court. The county court adopts the county's budget and the tax rate. They approve the purchases of the county, fill elective vacancies, set all salaries and benefits for county employees, authorizes county contracts, and provides and maintains all county buildings and facilities. So for both county judge and county commissioner, you'll want to be researching what their tax plans are, and especially if you're a county employee, you'll want to research what kind of salaries and building maintenance they'll be doing. Next up, we've got Justice of the Peace. Besides marrying people, the Justice of the Peace also hears traffic court cases and Class C misdemeanors that are only punishable by fine. They hear civil cases with up to $20,000 in controversy. They hear landlord and tenant disputes, hear truancy cases, and conducts inquests, like how did this person die, that kind of thing. So he's basically a judge for the smaller cases. So for everything I've been saying to research about judges, apply to Justice of the Peace as well. County constable. They enforce a bunch of laws again and provide traffic citations. And just like the sheriff, they serve warrants and civil papers. And they serve as the bailiff in the Justice of the Peace Court. So basically everything you researched for the sheriff, also researched for the constable. They're just at a lower rank. Now, that was the end of the county local elections. Next, we're going to municipal and district elections. And in my area, we hold those in May instead of with the regular November general election. I don't know if that's the case in your area, but that's what we do here. If it is different in your area, I'd like to know. So comment below and let me know when your municipal and district elections are. First up, we've got the mayor and the councilman. Now in my city, we have what we call a council manager form of government. This is where the council, headed by the mayor, makes the policy and they hire a city manager to implement all the ordinances and policy directions they've proposed. And we don't actually get to elect the city manager, but the city manager is the one who actually oversees the daily operation of the city. So what do the council and the mayor vote upon? They deal with parks and recreation services, police and fire departments, housing services, emergency medical services, municipal courts, transportation services, including public transportation, public works areas like streets, sewers, snow removal, and signage. They make ordinances on alcohol, animals, cemeteries, fireworks, and food services. So as you can see, local government doesn't have a lot of power, but it's spread out into a bunch of different areas that definitely affect your daily life. So surely there are at least a few areas I mentioned that you have some particular interest in, and research the ordinances your councilman and mayor candidates are proposing and see what best benefits you and your situation. And finally, last but not least, well, to some people it's least, but for most people it's not least, that is the district school board trustee candidate. What happens is these school board trustees are elected to the district school board, and then what they do is they hire a sort of CEO for the schools in that area. They're called the superintendent, and they run all the regulations on what the schools do on the day-to-day basis and how they, send school buses, who goes to which school. And the school board votes on building new schools or tearing down old ones. They can approve the teachers' contracts and outside vendors' contracts. They establish a vision for the school district, and they set the yearly budget, and this is the important part, taxes. Now, the school board is a forward-thinking organization that has to plan things out 5 to 10 years in advance. So even if you don't have kids right now, but you statistically will in say 5 or 10 years, and you're planning on sending them to public school, you might want to go ahead and get involved in these school board elections, especially if they're implementing a tax on you. But research all the intricacies of what these school board trustee candidates are saying they want to implement in the schools, and what kind of schools they want, how many schools they want, and what they want to teach the kids. Whew, we are done. I dearly hope this has been helpful to you. Again, there will be different ballot items depending on what area of the country you live in. So again, if there's something different that I didn't mention here, comment below and let us know what you know about the position and what kind of areas to research. That way, if someone else lives in your area, they can be helped by your comment. To find out what your ballot will look like, Just Google sample ballot and hopefully your county's election website will be the first thing that pops up. If it doesn't, there are also some third-party sites that help you know what your ballot will look like, such as Ballotpedia. Just make sure do not give them your email address. They will spam the heck out of you. Go through and research every candidate on the sample ballot so you're prepared when you go to the polls. And if you learn while doing your research that there's this one position where, gosh, it really doesn't affect you and you genuinely have no dog in that fight, feel free to leave it blank. It's much better not to participate in an election that doesn't affect you than do participate, accidentally elect the wrong guy, and inadvertently harm someone that position does affect. To this date, I have never said this in one of my videos, so I'm going to say it now. Please share this video. If it's been helpful to you, please share it with your friends, your family, your social media, and let people know what these ballot positions are and what they should be researching in order to responsibly vote for these candidates. Because there are a lot of people out there who vote on candidates just because of their party or their label, their personality, or even their appearance. But the more we know, the more confidence we can have that we're actually being responsible and diligent with our vote. Now, as responsible, diligent citizens, let's go out there, do our duty, and vote. Actually, wait, hold on. Don't vote if you are ineligible to vote. Like if you're under 18, because then that would be voter fraud and you'd go to jail. So just wanted to make that caveat. All right, go back to the thumbnails.